buildings were commandeered by the military during the 1860s, during the American Civil War. Housing barracks for officers of the U.S. Army and Navy. The U.S. Army and Navy, despite the fact that Louisiana was one of the 11 Confederate states, because our city itself was held by the Union most of that country. New Orleans was captured pretty early on in April of 1862. New Orleans was captured by Admiral David Farragut and the United States Navy, and Union forces held it for the remainder of the war. Get over, sweetie, come on. One of the reasons why the Confederacy never did manage to recapture the city, despite its very strategic location on the lower Mississippi River, is they just didn't have much of a navy in the South. And although our town is not actually an island, it might as well be. New Orleans is surrounded by water. So, if you're going to try to take it by force, you really need to use a navy to do that.
Yeah.
And they didn't really have much of the navy. We had a couple little boats here and there, but not enough to have anything. There's actually, so if you're at Jackson Square where we started, there's that statue of Andrew Jackson. It's mounted to the top of a granite base. And that granite base is inscribed on the front and the back with the phrase, "The Union must and shall be preserved."
Oh.
Now that inscription is not original to the statue. It was actually added there during the Civil War, the occupation of the city by Union forces, by General Benjamin Butler. He carved that in there just for the better.
This looks like as if you're going through Nagaratar community houses.
I'll see that one lonely little tree kind of poking up on the sidewalk here on the left. That's a lemon tree. 2 months ago it was covered in lemons, bigger than baseball.
Wow. Not big.
I found a little crack in the sidewalk right there to take root. All of a sudden, this next street right ahead of us here, that's Esplanade Avenue. The original Old City, the French Quarter, does run 13 blocks along the river between Canal Street on that end and Esplanade right here. So as we go across Esplanade, we're going to be exiting the French Quarter. Easy. All right, we'll follow them then, sweetie. So that whole neighborhood right ahead of us there, that is not the French Quarter, that is the Marigny neighborhood. This is the second oldest neighborhood in the city. Well, they started building houses on this land out here back in 1805. And prior to being developed into a residential area, all this used to be a sugar farm. Would have been almost upwards of 1,000 acres of sugar cane at one point in time. And they certainly do still farm quite a bit of sugar cane here in southern Louisiana. That's one of the major agricultural resources in this part of the state. They grow a lot of rice around here as well. And did you know, right out there in the rice fields, when they're not farming rice, that's where they farm crawfish. In the very same field. So all you really need is shallow, fresh water to make that work just fine.
Look at those handles with alligators. இங்க ரொம்ப இருக்குமோ? Alligators. So they find lot of alligators.
Now what we're going to do, y'all, since we cut over here into the Marigny, it looks like we're going to take a little ride up a little part of Frenchman Street. Have you been down to Frenchman before?
No.
So Frenchman is where you're going to find all the good jazz clubs.
Okay.
And the music part of Frenchman is only 2 blocks long. It's 500 and 600
ಇದು lemon tree. This is also
But
lemon tree.
within those 2 blocks, there are 13 separate live music venues. So a pretty compact little area, but all these different options for live music. And just so you know, a number of the spots down here that have stages with live entertainment are restaurants, not bar rooms. So you don't have to be 21 to go into all of them. Yeah, there's a few options for kids in. To our right, that's going to be the 500 block, and you've got, there's going to be Favela Chic, the Rambler, Maison, Bambulas, 3090, the Blue Nile, and Free Music, all right down there. And at least 3 of those, that's going to be Maison, Bambulas, and 3090, those are restaurants, but they do have stages for live entertainment, usually starting up in the mid-afternoon. That building across the street with the yellow doors and the blue walls, that's the Dot Dog, y'all. That's a 2-story hot dog restaurant. Never did wonder what a hot dog might taste like if you made it out of a duck or an alligator.
Oh, okay.
And that tater tot too.
Alligators in the hot dog is nice.
That's for
Huh?
the music coming up.
They
through
make
the spot.
alligator
Yeah,
hot
Cafe
dogs.
Grill.
Yeah.
Over here on the left, a little spot across from them called the Apple Barrel. And
Alligator
then right
hot
next to the
dogs.
Apple Barrel, there's a wooden fence and a metal gate. That will be an open-air arts market in the evening, where local artists will come out and show and tell their work right here. DBA is another music club over here on the left.
There is a skeleton there. Tattoo.
Now back over to the left is Snug Harbor. In Snug Harbor, as you'll see through the windows, this one is primarily a restaurant in the front anyway, but there is a theater behind the dining room. They have a whole two-story showroom at the back of the building. And the way they do it at this place is if you want to go sit in the back to watch the show, you do buy tickets to go into the theater. Most of these clubs don't have a cover.
Are those like live shows?
Snug Harbor. If you kind of roll on down and just sit in the front to have dinner, they always play the music live through audio monitors into the dining room. Plus, nice you can still hear what's happening on the stage, even if you're not watching the show. And then there's one more on the corner here. That brick building is the Marigny Brasserie, which is also a restaurant, but their stage is right in the dining room itself.
Look at the other side of the park. Right? We were standing on the other side of the park.
Right across the street on the right, that's Washington Square Park. And that land has been a park since 1851.
Mm.
What's the difference about the parking started? That's Jackson Square.
Now, most of the rest of this neighborhood, and again, we're in the Marigny, used to be the Marigny Triangle specifically, it's going to be mostly residential outside of that little stretch of French there. Generally, a mix of
ನಮ್ಮ ಊರ್ ಮರಿ ಕಾಂಪೌಂಡ್ ವಾಲ್
houses
ಗೇಟ್
like you see here,
ಬಾಲ್ಕನಿ.
and then Creole cottages like the ones just beyond us. You might notice that houses in this neighborhood can get to be quite a bit more colorful than what they are in the French Quarter.
Yeah.
That's because they have regulations in the quarter that don't really apply out here. That's the oldest, most historic area. And so, they've got the Building Commission maintaining the historic integrity of the quarter itself. This area is historic, and there are some guidelines, but it's not quite as stringent as it would be across that one.
2000.
And are they all low lying for a reason? Like,
Which
they're-
ones?
the
Ceilings.
structures themselves, like they're not
The ceilings
very
are-
high ceilings, right?
Oh, no, not at all. Well, I guess when they were building these back, a lot of these houses date to the early 1800s. And the foundation beneath the houses in New Orleans is, you've got to put pilings down pretty deep. There's no bedrock.
Okay.
So I think they didn't want to, they generally didn't have the technology to build
To
multiple
build,
story
yeah,
buildings
yeah,
when most of these were being
Yeah.
built. Eventually they figured that out, and you can see one shell square and
Oh, right there.
But in 1815, yeah,
Fusion.
it was,
Fusion of both.
Yeah. No, it's good. They maintained it, they preserved how it was. So we get
So the
to see it.
foundation is what, pier and beam or?
Yes, generally they're going to
See, இவ சின்ன தின்ன வச்சு வீடு.
pilings down into
Yeah.
down to the ground.
So small,
They have put chair thing.
And you'll notice that a lot of the houses out here are actually going to be raised up off the ground, and that
Yeah.
would have been to account
Yeah.
for annual flooding.
2004.
It used to be the case that pretty much every year the river would flood the city when the snow melted in the north.
What happens now?
The font.
Well,
Look at the
they've
font.
fortified the
So
levees over the
healthy
years.
and
and it
so
just-
So now it doesn't come.
Kaka.
I heard about the New Orleans flood like a couple of years ago, I guess.
Yeah, it certainly can happen throughout most of the city, but the thing is, right now, we're actually on some of the highest ground in the entire city. It is true that many parts of New Orleans exist below sea level, but not where we are. Right now, we're probably somewhere between 6 and 8 feet above sea level. And the closer you get to the Mississippi River, the higher the elevation, which is kind of counterintuitive. And when you're standing on Decatur Street, where we met, the surface of the Mississippi River is above your head when you're standing. So it's actually higher than street level. But the further you go that way, you're going to be on lower and lower ground. And of course, the famous flood after Hurricane Katrina. Well, those waters all came out of Lake Pontchartrain, not the Mississippi River. In City Park, there are probably 800 or 900-year-old businesses. And that street actually goes straight up to the front door of the New Orleans Museum of Art. So that's where the art museum is located, and there are sculpture gardens right behind the museum, and botanical gardens behind the sculpture gardens. Oh, and also the Louisiana Children's Museum, that's out in City Park too as well. We're not going to take it all the way out to the park today. We're going to take a
Why
ride
the
up
daytime
Royal
this is
Creole.
burning?
This is Royal that we're on right now. This is probably one
It's
of
like
the
gas. It's
Probably one of the
Burnt
prettier
gas.
thoroughfares, I'd say, comes through the neighborhood.
They didn't turn it off.
You see, it's an African restaurant. Taste of Africa.
Hey Glenn, let's pull over, all right? Yeah. I think we both can fit over there, huh? Yeah, we can. All right. You all see the big gray mansion looking thing right here on the left?
Yeah.
Three-story house. This
Yeah,
one has
yeah.
a bit of an infamous reputation. At the history of our city, that is the Lalaurie Mansion. And a lot of people will tell you that's the most haunted house in the city.
Whoa,
Well,
most
one-
haunted.
Haunted.
Right here on the
Most haunted house.
I mean, y'all
Hilarious.
see if you
This
can
is
get
to
a
be the
look
most
at the
haunted
entryway
house.
right here as we pass by. So this building is the former home of Delphine Lalaurie and her husband, Dr. Louis Lalaurie. That goes all the way back to the 1820s and the 1830s. It used to belong, much more recently, it did belong to the movie actor guy Nicolas Cage for a couple of years. Because of course he bought the famous haunted house when it was available for sale. He likes to buy stuff like that. But the reason people think it's haunted is because of something that happened here back in 1834. There was a fire in the kitchen of this building, and it was the guys who came in to put this fire out. They discovered a chamber within their home where the Lalauries had people shackled to the walls, locked up, more or less being neglected and starved. There were people locked up in that room already dead. So it was a real life and genuine chamber of horrors. You know, a lot of people believe that some of those poor tortured spirits are still hanging around the building to this day.
Oh, is it open for the public?
No, it's been a private residence for as long as I can remember. It's been a number of different things
So
over
who
the
owns
years.
it now?
So it was purchased about 8 months ago, and
8 months
the
ago.
guy who bought it, I forget his name, but it's the same guy who owns the Lizzie Borden house up in Massachusetts, another famous murder
Oh, that's
house.
another haunted house. Yeah,
So,
I've heard of that. Yeah.
And I know that he paid $4.3 million for this building.
Oh my god.
And the Lizzie Borden house, they were trying to get 10.2. That was her first asking price.
Mm.
But the house that he's got up in Massachusetts, he uses that like as a little B&B. So I suspect he has similar plans for this. If he can
Yeah.
get the permits together with the city, I think that's probably what he's going to do with it.
So next time we'll stay over
Stay
here.
here. We will all stay together.
We'll all stay together. Don't want to stay in this haunted house anymore.
Typically during the height of summer, I'm talking about like July,
Nicholas, this
August,
was bought
September, New Orleans empties
by
out. Nobody
an
wants
actor,
to do it.
Nicholas.
Yeah.
So all the hotels and the little B&Bs, they'll drop their prices pretty drastically. And if he converts that into a B&B and a room here ever gets cheap enough,
அதாவது
I'm gonna
தமிழ்ல
rent
சொல்லணும்னா
one.
இது ஒரு பேய் வீடு.
Yeah, why not?
ஏதாவது நடந்துட்டே இருக்கும் அந்த வீட்ல.
Yeah.
Oh, that goes all the way back to when the people that used to own it used to have people locked up inside and they weren't really feeding them or taking care of them. It's just a spooky old story that's been around forever. I've actually seen pictures of this building dated 1903. And in 1903, the ground floor right here was a saloon. So there was a sign mounted to the wall right on the corner. And across the top of that sign it said the Haunted Exchange. So that was the name
Now
of
they're
the
actually
saloon.
mules and not horses.
Across the bottom of the sign it said beer and oysters. It's not all bad, y'all. Now, although Nicolas Cage sold it back in 2010, he does still own one piece of property here in town, which I assume he intends to hang on to. After he sold this building, Nicolas Cage turned around and he bought himself a piece of land at St. Louis Cemetery number 1. Now, St. Louis Cemetery number 1 is the oldest cemetery in the city. It opened in 1789. That's on base.